And welcome to another episode of Crypto Reality. I'm your host, Mark Zasky, the Zask Man. Let the madness begin. Tonight we're going to be doing something different. I know normally we focus on field research and film, video. But we've given this consideration for quite some time now. So we're firing up the Members Encounter series. So we're going to be hearing from one of our members tonight, one of your fellow members here at CryptoReality.us. What motivates somebody to want to be a member of CryptoReality.us? Do they recognize what's in our films? Do you recognize what's in our films? If so, like the gentleman we're going to hear from tonight, contact me at CryptoReality.us at gmail.com and we'll get you in for a guest spot here on the show with me. We can go over your encounter. Now, I myself, being an eyewitness now on multiple occasions, and a field researcher who spent a lot of time in the bush with the Bigfoot species, have experienced a level of interaction with the Bigfoot species that is traumatizing. Yet for all my encounters and all my field experience and all the things you've seen happen in our films, none of it compares to the encounter and the situation, the circumstances that our guest tonight is going to unfold for you. Tonight on Crypto Reality, we welcome CryptoReality.us member Kerry Arnold.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. It's been on my mind quite a bit.
Well, you know, Kerry, it's a very difficult thing to deal with. So, yeah, I mean, I understand because I've been through it, you know?
Right.
So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, man? What do you do for a living, that kind of thing? If you don't mind.
Not at all. My name is Kerry Arnold. I work in the oil field as a well tester, senior well tester for Rockwater Energy Solutions. I've been doing that for about 4 years now. I live in West Texas. Actually, I live in North Texas, Lubbock to be exact. And I work in the Permian Basin on land, obviously. Born and raised in South Mississippi. You know, grew up there hunting, fishing. Outdoors was my thing, you know. Played sports. That was pretty much it, you know. Outdoors and girls and sports.
Outdoors. So when you talk about outdoors, like in your life history now, about how much time have you spent in the outdoors? Altogether.
30 years. Wow.
That's like me, man, you know. So in your estimation, you well first of all, what type of activities did you participate in the outdoors? What was your passion?
Deer hunting.
So you're a deer hunter.
Deer, some turkey, squirrels, rabbits, whatever season it was, hogs, but deer was where I put my money and my time mostly.
Well, let me ask you this: why deer? Was it more of a challenge?
Definitely, it was definitely the challenge, and it was just what buck fever is.
Oh yes.
I'd get bug fever in August,
Yeah.
Just out getting the property ready. I had a lease that was mine, just mine. No one hunted with me. It was my sanctuary.
And this is in Mississippi, correct?
Yes, that's in Collins, Mississippi. And so
That's where your lease is at.
that's where my lease was. Yes,
Okay, and would I be correct in saying that this is also where everything changed on this
yeah,
lease? On this lease.
right there.
And what year was it that everything changed for you?
It was March the 10th, 2007.
So everything before March the 10th, 2007, everything was just normal, par for the course. You'd never heard anything or anything strange went on at all? You never had a deer come up missing that you shot?
Oh yeah, I lost a nice 8-point that I shot with a 7mm mag. I mean, shot him right through the side. Maybe just a little bit far back, possibly. I don't know, but I mean, I heard him crash. I heard him go down, and it was early in the morning, so I sat in the tree for a while, waiting for another one. And when I went down to go get him, I found the blood trail. I found where I thought he crashed. There was a lot of in the bottoms. It's all deciduous tree, so leaves everywhere. So a lot of it was stirred up, so I couldn't tell exactly where he crashed. But I mean, I saw the blood, lung blood. So, but I never found him.
Was it a comparable amount of blood to deer that in the past you had? Basically when you walked up on them, they were DOA?
I really couldn't say, man. I mean, sometimes in that particular instance, I don't know. I mean, I knew I trailed blood until I didn't see any anymore. And I think, that might have been to the point where I thought he crashed, where it sounded like he crashed.
Okay, so there was nothing suspicious going on other than the fact that the deer wasn't there.
There were things, but it was nothing that I attributed to anything out of the ordinary until later.
Later. Okay, so
right.
Now we are actually getting into the realm of what could possibly be going on. Anything else? Any noises, any sounds in this area while you hunted this area? How long did you hunt the area, first of all?
From early 2000 was when I actually started. Actually, a friend of mine had that I was talking to said his grandfather had some property. Nobody hunted on it, and he hooked me up with his grandpa, and it was 240 acres, partially fenced in, and it was a perfect habitat, and nobody hunted it. I mean, he had nephews that lived around him, but none of them ever hunted in there. If they did, it was, maybe once years ago, before I'd ever come in. So I mean, I pretty much came in and developed the whole property, just in the matter of 7 years.
And coming from those guys that owned it before, or that hunted on it before, there were never they never said anything to you about anything odd?
No. Nothing.
Okay. All right. And the reason I say all this, or the reason I'm going after that, is because typically these guys don't, in the South, what we've recognized is they don't do a lot of migrating. If they're on a piece of property, typically they've been there.
Right.
And I think that a lot of what goes on goes unnoticed or is attributed to just natural damage or anything like that. When you were in those areas or on that lease, at any point did you happen to notice any kind of odd tree breaks that were in areas where there was just maybe a single tree and no other damage around? Any kind of signatures that you may have come to recognize since you've been looking into this after your encounter? Did you look back and say, man, I did notice that, or I didn't know what to attribute that to, but now you do?
Maybe. I mean, before the fact, I would have definitely attributed it to deadfall or, but nothing, never a track or a really obvious tree break. No, I mean, I'll just have to say no on that, no.
Okay. No, and that's actually really typical where you have experienced hunter-gatherers. You know what I mean? The
Right.
bottom line is they don't survive if they make themselves known. And I think that's something that we've documented. So, but now we're coming up to, what was the date? March 13th, you said?
March 10th.
March 10th, 2007, correct?
07.
07. Does that instance stick in your mind?
Oh yeah, more vividly than any other memory ever.
Well, why don't we take it from the very beginning? And I don't just mean the encounter. the morning, the wake up, the entire thing, because I
Okay.
think it's really important not just to get the statement, but there are aspects of your prep that are very important. Hunters, and I am a hunter of sorts, are trained observers. We have to be, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Aside from the actual hunt, I don't know a tremendous amount about what type of dangerous wildlife is in that area that you hunted on that lease, but I know that it's a consideration where I'm at. So I always say if it's a consideration for me when I'm out there, then it's a consideration for most people. So why don't you take us from the very beginning of that morning? That morning, give us some details on your state of mind and so on. Okay?
Okay. Well, let me give you a lay of the land first. I don't know if you know what a dummy line is or finger bottoms, if I could say it like that. This property, the way it's laid out, it's 240 acres, relatively square. Um, longer east to west, and there's an old logging road that runs right through the middle, and it goes up and down hills because there's bottoms. If you laid your hand down, on the desk, it's pretty much what it's like. The terrain, you have your fingers or the ridge lines or the dummy lines. There's probably only three major ones. And obviously the bottoms would be, the valleys between your fingers. And say around the tip of your hand would be this one big bottom that wrapped all the way around the property. And it obviously extended on beyond the property, but I mean, it was just what they call a bottom, and it's in Mississippi, all the bottoms, you have your hardwoods, you have your oak trees and bay trees, what else? Maple, things like that, hickory. And on the ridge line was mostly pine. Now, some of this had been cut over, where they had taken the pine trees off. So in the front part, just when you come into the property, you go down a hill and it kind of curves around to the right, and you just right through the center runs this road. Well, the road, it's a logging road, so it gets really bad. So a vehicle wouldn't make it unless you had just the baddest four-wheel drive there was. You're not going to make it all the way through to the end. And that's normally what I did. When I came in with my truck was just parked about halfway in, and I always deer hunted in the front half because that's where they were. I mean, it was perfect habitat. When you have terrain like that, you have multiple choke points. They'll move across the big bottom and then move in up the smaller ones to come in and feed. And of course, I had feeders out and I had shooting houses. I mean, I had two nice spots. And it was one day I had decided I was going to hunt a little bit farther down the back. This was during deer season. And I went a little farther down than I normally do into the bottoms, the hardwoods. I'm just looking for the big buck, And that was when I found where the turkeys were roosting. Because before I didn't know. I knew there were turkeys in there, but I had hunted turkeys in there, but I'd never gotten anything until I actually found exactly where they were roosting. That's when I decided I was going to get in that area set up, a little bit further back to an open place I could call them in and, harvest turkeys. So I found a spot, and so I'd say the back right corner, if you're going east, from west to east, the back right southeast corner of the property, it's a little clearing. Now, when I say it's little. I stepped it off. It's about 120 feet long and about 80 feet wide. And there's a few small pine trees in it, maybe 8 or 10 really small, maybe 12, 15 foot tall pine trees, 8 to 10 inches around, just scattered throughout. It's really, really clear. But it had sagebrush growing underneath. So what I had done about a week before I wanted to hunt there was I burned that off. Turkeys love that. I don't know why they do, but they do. So I burned that off, and came back to get prepared. You know, it was the morning of that. I got up early that morning, drove out, and I normally park my truck down the road. You know, I drive down the middle of the road. Well, this time I left my truck at the house. You know, the property is behind this old man's house, and you have to go around a road and down behind to the side, kind of, to get back there with your vehicle. So I got there to his house. It was probably maybe 5 a.m. You know, sun comes up here, 6:30, 6:45, or there where I was, about 6:45. So I offload my four-wheeler. I get all my stuff together, you know, all my camo. I'm fully decked out. Got for turkey hunting, because if you ever turkey hunt, if a turkey sees you, he's gone. You know, that it's over with. So I mean, you really have to hide from them. Other than that, they're not a very smart bird. But if they do see you, they're out of there. So I get all that together, and I have a Benelli 3.5 inch, all synthetic, 12 gauge automatic, and I got the plug in. So I've got high brass number 4s. I got 3 shots, and I got 6 in my pocket. I put that on the four-wheeler. I get all my stuff, my bags, and I drive to the beginning of. I go down the road to get to where the lease road starts, and I just pull in. I'm not going to pull my four-wheeler all the way down. I'm going to walk in, and I'm going all the way pretty much to the back. The first time I had actually hunted this particular area that I had burned off about 5 days before.
Approximately how much did you burn off, Kerry?
The whole thing. I burned it all. Because if the way it's cleared is, I don't want to call it red clay, but this area, it's flat, and if you look at it like a football field, okay, if you look at it like a football field, the south sideline and east end zone, it drops off down into the bottom that I'm talking about, that wrapped all the way around. You know, it's obviously up the hill on the high spot where the trees were, but surrounding the whole thing, the whole sideline, is thicket, but it's not super thick. You know, some places it's really thick, some places it's not. You know, there's on the north sideline towards the west end zone, in that corner, there's a big, huge pine tree. And that's where I was going to stage up. You know, I had already cut some small bushes and had them laid out there where I was going to, you know, set my spot up and get ready to call turkeys.
Right.
So if you can imagine, you know, I'm coming into this. You're coming into the football field from the west end zone. I'm going to stage up in the northwest corner of the end zone where I can see all the way down the north sideline to the east, far southeast corner, and the south sideline to my right. Now the northeast corner, there's a game trail, and it doesn't drop off quite as dramatically as it does from the back of the end zone. I hope this is working for you.
I got you.
It drops off pretty steep off the end zone, but in the corner it doesn't. You can see pretty far down that game trail. It's pretty wide. It's probably about 4 or 5 feet wide game trail. A lot of stuff came through there. And on the far side, my right, it dropped off pretty dramatically. But behind me, it was the hill. You know, you're still on the ridge. And behind me and directly to my right, which would be the west end zone. That was where the road came in. The trail, four-wheeler road anyway. So I walk in, and I've got all my stuff, my bags. I've got a little small chair, and I get right in front of that pine tree, which is probably about 15 feet down the north sideline, which is, you know, the same sideline the game trail is on. The game trail is farther down. It's about 75, 80 feet to my left. I'm facing the far southeast end zone. That's where I'm facing. I've got a good solid view of the whole area. And I get set up. I get my my little sagebrush or whatever brush I'd found to put in front of me. Had my net over my face, had the black under my eyes and my Recondo hat. I was invisible as far as I was concerned, to a turkey anyway. And I start calling, and I called for a long time. I had a chirp in my mouth, I had a box call, and I had a locator. A locator is just, you shake it, sounds like a turkey gobbling. If you hit it and there's a big turkey around, he's going to gobble back at you.
Right. Can't resist it.
No.
How long you think he called?
Oh, probably 2 hours.
Okay.
I probably got started. By the time I got in there and set up, it was probably about 6:30. And then before I actually saw any action at all, and I probably wasn't being too quiet, snacking and just enjoying being out there, really.
Right. Comfortable.
I was, absolutely. I was.
Because you knew your thing there. You were, you'd been there before.
Exactly.
Confident and comfortable.
That's it. 100%.
All right, man, continue.
So I'm calling, and I finally get some action. I get, they're starting to gobble back at me, and I'm doing my chirp, and I'm calling, and I can finally start. I can see the turkeys. They're coming up the game trail, and as they're walking up, I don't have my eyes anywhere else. I'm watching them. There's 2 jakes, which are young turkeys, and maybe 5 or 6 hens. I didn't see any big gobblers. Then they were probably behind them. They were probably going to come on up. But they're coming up that game trail that's in the northwest end zone, the corner. And they're coming. Pretty good clip. Well, they stop, perk up, and then they just erupt. They're gone. Just flying, flapping, crashing through the woods. Well, I'm like, damn it. There's no way they saw me, at that moment. Well, at the same time that happens, almost instantly, I hear somebody coming. They're walking through the bottom. Now, this is somebody. I know it's somebody because it's 2 legs, and it's a pretty good stride.
Describe what you hear.
I can hear the leaves. That's all you have in those bottoms is hardwoods, And
it's step after step after step. 1 step, 1 step, 1 step, right?
Oh, yes. And a pretty good clip.
How many seconds between each step?
A lot. Maybe not even a second. Maybe a second.
So they were moving.
Yeah, they were coming.
Okay.
It's somebody. They're coming up. So I can see and I'm watching. I can hear where it's coming from where I am. I'm in the northwest end zone, not all the way in the corner, but I'm up by this big pine tree, which is about 15 feet into the clearing. And I'm facing off to the far opposite corner, to the southeast. And I can hear them. They're coming around, or coming through that bottom. And they're walking, they're coming. And I see the top of the head.
The top of what head?
The top of whoever's coming through there.
What did you see?
Well, it looked like to me was just, it was dark and I could see it bobbing every time it went. So, I knew it wasn't a deer. It was dark. I can't say that I noticed that it was really a cone-shaped head at the time. But I definitely noticed that later. But it's sad, it's coming through trees and there's a little bit of thicket and it's not exactly clear. It's still a pretty good ways off.
So he's off to your left?
He's the way I'm facing is directly in front of me.
Okay.
If you're looking at this like it's a football field, and I'm in one end zone corner, the opposite end zone corner is where he's coming across.
Okay.
And that's the head bob I'm seeing coming up, and I get to where I can see a little bit more.
But how far was he at that point? 120
feet, okay. Maybe 130. Gotcha. But it's a drop off, so it's a grade.
Gotcha.
And I'm wondering why in the hell this person is walking through that mess, you know? And I'm obviously upset because this is my lease, and they just scared off my turkeys, you know? And so, I mean, if he's going to keep going the way he's going, I'm going to have to let him know I'm there. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, he's still coming across, he's coming. So I stand up. I didn't stand up all the way. I stood up and put my back against that tree. You know, like I'm sitting on a stool, my knees are still bent, but, you know, not standing all the way up, because I'm going to let him know I'm there so he don't shoot me. You know, I don't scare him, and, you know, just the smart thing to do.
Right.
And I've got my shotgun. It's kind of across my lap, pointed down to my left. I've got my hand up on the butt. You know, I've got my right hand's up on the butt. My left hand is around the stop, is around the grip, pointed down at the ground. Well, I see him coming, and I can see more. He's starting to actually make the grade. He's actually coming up, and it looks like he's going to intersect with the game trail and the corner of that clearing. Now, there's a couple of small pine trees right there, probably 2 or 3 feet off the drop off there, just about maybe 5 feet to the right of the game trail. And I say he gets about maybe 15, 20 feet from there, and I can see the top, and I can see he's wearing camouflage, but it looks like a ghillie suit maybe. And I can see his face. It's a black guy. I mean, which wasn't outside the realm of possibility, because the man's property I was on was a black man. His nephews, you know, that lived around him they were black folks, you know. So that's exactly what I thought it was someone turkey hunting. He's wearing camouflage.
Now, when you say camouflage, what color was the camouflage he was wearing? What did you see?
What I saw looked like, you know, back then, '07, you had, you know, real tree, mossy oak. It kind of looks like mossy oak. I mean, but it wasn't everywhere. It was just on all over the front, maybe not quite up to his neck. I didn't see his right side. He's coming from my right to left. So I'm looking at his left side, you know, and I can't remember seeing any like on the arm or anything, but what he had on his body.
Are you describing clothing?
What I'm describing to you, Mark, what I realized what it was later was mud. Okay. It was mud. But at the time, it looked like camo. So this is somebody. It has to be.
How big was this individual?
Well, at the time, didn't really appear to be that large. I mean, still coming through relatively thick stuff. You know, it wasn't a real, I mean, I could see the outline. I could see this guy has on camouflage on his body. I mean, I wasn't studying him that hard at that time. When he actually got to the point where he came up to that tree, that small pine tree, and he reached his hand out from about 5 feet away to grab that tree, that's pretty much when I realized either somebody was messing with me. That's the first thing that went through my mind. When I realized that this was not a person, that I realized that this was something else, that somebody was messing with me and were about to get shot, or it was a real creature. And when I actually realized it was a real creature, I could see the whole face. At this point, he's there. He's come up, he's put his hand around that tree, and he's stopped. He's pulled his body all the way up. His right hand is on that tree, and it's pulled in close to him. If you can imagine, he's standing beside this tree, and his arm is bent, his hand's around the tree, and he is wide, Mark. I mean, wide. He has no neck, and I can see the face clearly. Now, there's a little bit of brush and stuff in front. He's standing maybe 3 or 4 feet down that grade still, but he stopped and he's looking dead at me. And
now, let me ask you a question. How long did it take him before he zeroed on you?
As soon as he stopped, he was on me. probably before. He knew exactly where I was. And I mean, I'm standing there, even though I'm decked out in camouflage, I'm not behind my little blind anymore. I'm actually standing up now. But he stopped and looked directly at me and starts making this noise. I call it noise. It sounded very guttural, demonic. It was very unsettling noise. I can give you the best description I've got is it's all vowels. It's just this. It's loud, and it would get softer and a little bit louder, like he was talking to either me or himself, or just making a god awful noise. Well, I'm shitting my pants, man. I'm freaking out. I literally cannot move at this point. I don't even know if I'm breathing. Now, I actually thought about that later, if I was breathing or not, because I knew I was breathing later. But at that time, I just didn't know. But he's making this noise, and you get that when you first see and you first realize your world ends. Everything everything that you believe about the woods, it comes crashing down on you. I mean, it's really hard to explain. Your heart drops into your stomach, but it's like it continuously is doing it. It's like wrenching in your stomach, the feeling that you have.
It's primitive.
Yeah, it was.
So you're in this position, and how far are you from your actual car, the house, safety? Right at that moment when he's looking at you and he's going, and he's making this sound, he's doing what he's doing, and
right.
This is not supposed to be happening, right?
Right.
And then you get blood runs cold and the guts turning, and I've been there, so I know exactly what you're saying. How far were you from safety? Because I think that's another consideration. I know when I saw what I saw, I thought about how far, if this guy comes at us, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? How far do I have to get safe? You know what I mean?
I was all the way in the back, Mark. I was a half a mile from my four-wheeler.
So you were, had you thought about your protection and all that? What was going through your mind? Try to think back.
What I was actually thinking at this point is, if I have to shoot it, where am I going to shoot it? Because I've got high brass number 4s. I got 3 of them. Not given it's an automatic. And I believe if something like that's close enough, I could probably make a canoe out of his head. But I still wasn't positive, because he was just that big. I mean,
how big was he?
You're talking 4 feet wide, Mark, and he's got mud all over his front, and it looks like it's all over his right side, to the front, around to his right, where he's got his arm. He's grabbing a hold. He's hanging onto this tree, standing right beside it, and his arm's pulled into him. So he's right beside the tree, and I can see the mud on his front, all the way down to, I can see just about from his knees up. Now on his left hand, his left arm, it unbelievably long. I mean, just the length was enough. It was just the proportions were mad. His forearm, insane how big this thing's forearm was. The muscle on the top of his forearm, it just didn't belong. I mean, you're thinking Popeye times 3 as far as proportions go. It looked like it was just stuck on there. I didn't see his hands really good. I could see the tips of his fingers on his left hand. I couldn't see his right hand at all. He has his left hand all the way down to his side. It's not bent at all. Well, he starts to stick his tongue out at this point. At one point in there, when he's making the noise, he sticks his tongue out like he's showing his teeth. It's the whitest teeth you ever saw. It's got the black face, really, protagonist mouth, just comical. No big lips, really, really thin lips. Huge cheekbones. I mean, they weren't the really small ones. But his nose was pointed. It was like, I say Scottie Pippen is what I equate it to. He's got the deep set eyes, really, really pronounced brow ridge, and he is angry.
Dude looks scary.
It's a monster, dude. It was the boogeyman looking right at me.
Yeah.
And he's making this noise and talking. And at this point, I'm deciding just exactly what am I going to do, you know, 'cause he's just standing there, and I'm just standing there. So I've got my gun, I've got my shotgun, it's pointed down to the ground to my left. Well, I have my hand up on the stock, up on the butt. Well, I go to ease my hand down the stock, and just to put my hand on the grip, just to get ready. So I'm easing my hand down, and that's when he came alive. That's when he got really upset, and he starts rocking back and forth. And he's rocking back and forth, and I stopped at that point. I didn't put my hand on the grip anymore, but he rocks back and forth. He probably does it 4 times, and Mark, he let out a huff. I call it a huff because that's what it was. And when he did that, it was just it makes me shake. It makes me shake to think about it now. When he did that, that's when I stood up, and it was just just so powerful. I mean, it shook my liver, it shook my spine. It was that intense. You know, use the little air blaster gun that you got when you were a kid. You know, you pump it up and it shoots the ball of air out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all you feel. I don't know if they still make those or not, but that's what it was like. It was like that wave hitting me. And at that point, that's when I stood straight up and I got myself ready. I hit my safety, and I didn't raise my gun. I still had it pointed down, but he went right back to making that little noise again. And he's shaking back and forth. And I'm standing there and he's standing there, and it seems like forever. I mean, it seems like 20 minutes. It probably wasn't 45 seconds, you know, or a minute. From the point he did the huff until he starts doing that again, as we're just standing there. And I think he's coming. I'm thinking this guy's on his way, and I'm gonna have to shoot him and just reload as fast as I can and run. But I don't think I can move. I mean, I don't think I can move even right then. I'm thinking I can't move my legs. I can't move anything. You know, I'm just stiff
From the fear.
Oh, absolutely.
So describe his face. What did it look like? Did he change expressions at all during this amount of time you were staring at each other?
Yeah, he would. His lips would move. He would where you couldn't see his teeth anymore. You know, it was the one time where he stuck his tongue out. You know, but it was like he was just tasting the air or something. I don't know.
What color was the tongue?
It was pink. It wasn't bright pink, but I knew it was his tongue, you know.
So it appeared that he had a very clean mouth. What you said was he had bright white teeth and
Those were the whitest teeth I ever saw.
Pink tongue.
On anything. White.
Wow. Scowling?
Oh, he was upset. He was definitely angry at me.
Now, when you're watching this happen, at any point, did you see the head turn independent of the upper torso, or when he moved his head, if he moved at all, was the torso moving? How did he move?
No, his head did not move independent. There's no neck. He has a very, very pointed head. I'm looking at him straight on. He's looking straight at me. I'm looking straight at him. I can see his face clearly. There's a little bit of brush and scrub in front, but I can still see the whole damn thing. I mean, it was all there. No head. His head didn't turn or move side to side. His whole body was rocking back and forth. And when he rocked, that tree was just getting it. I mean, he wasn't shaking the tree. The tree was shaking because he was holding on to it. I don't know if he was using that to assist him in rocking. I don't know. I mean, I can sit here and rock back and forth without a tree, but you know, he's standing.
How much you think did the subject weigh?
800 pounds.
Wow.
Minimum.
And about how tall was he?
That I have trouble with. Maybe 7 feet, 7.5 feet.
Because of the grade, he was down a bit.
He's standing down the grade, and I can't really see his knees. I can see just about from his knees up.
So it could have been another 2 to 3 feet.
Could have been. He's even hunched over too.
So at the top of the grade, from what you could see, about how much of him was showing?
Just about from his knees up, and I would say that was at least 6 feet.
Oh, so this is a very large, and this is an 8-footer, easy.
Yeah, this is the man.
Yeah. So what happened then? You guys are staring at each other. You're obviously where you should be, according to everything you know, and now what you're confronted with. And then what happened?
He stops. He stops. He lets go of the tree, and he turns his whole body. He never took his eyes off of me. He didn't turn his head. He turned his head sideways, like a dog would. If you whistle at a dog and they look at your head like, what the hell are you doing? You know, one of those things. He turns his body to the right. He cocks his head to the right, like he's looking down his nose at me. And he takes about 3 steps to get onto that game trail and walks dead away from me. Now, he's not all the way on the game trail. As he's walking, I'm watching him, but there's the little trees in the way. So I can see him, and then I can't see him. And then I can see a little bit of him, and then I can't see him. And just about the time he probably got maybe another 100 feet down that game trail, he yelled again. Ah, you know, like, you son of a, you know. That's what it felt like, you know, after the dust settled and I thought back on it, you know. Then it was just a loud ass yell. A big guy yelling in the wood.
So what were you thinking? I mean,
I didn't know what to think about any of it, you know.
Well, I mean, he's walking away. Were you thinking about going the other direction?
I couldn't. I still stood right there. I couldn't move. I was petrified.
Oh my God, man! Oh my God.
I still stood right there for a good couple minutes, you know.
Just looking.
And I'm just looking, and I'm looking everywhere I can. Just my eyes. I'm turning my head everywhere, and I don't hear anything. I mean, the woods are dead silent at this point. I mean, I can't hear any walking. I can't hear anything. Well, just about the time that I realize I am breathing, because I can actually feel it now. And I'm breathing heavy and hard. My heart is just beating out of my chest. That's when I could actually start to move. And actually started walking out. I thought about pulling the plug out and putting other shots in, but I was like, no, if something happens and I'm not ready for it, you know, that wasn't an option. So, but I had the other shells. I had 3 more shells in my hand as I'm walking out, just in case I have to reload quick. I've got them ready. And as I'm walking out, trembling, knees shaking, and my head's on a swivel, I would stop. I wouldn't stop for long. As you know, where we're from, you know, there's big cats. You know, you've got even bobcats will attack you. But there's panthers. And the way you know one's following you is you stop. You stop, and they'll take a couple more steps.
That's right.
You know? So I did that a couple of times, but not for very long. You know, just split second. I didn't hear anything. Okay, let's go. And I actually got a little bit faster as I got through. Well, I mean, I had to walk the entire way. About the last 200 yards, and the last 200 is up a hill, a pretty good grade. I stop and I go to turn around just to get a real good listen. And that's when I heard the tree pop. And it was probably maybe 50, 75 yards away, back behind me off the road. And this was not a small limb pop. This was a fresh, crack, pop, break tree limb. That's when I ran. That's when I started running. And I got to my 4-wheeler. I got on, cranked it, drove to the house. I pushed my 4-wheeler. I didn't load it up. I pushed my 4-wheeler up to the edge of the house. I got in my truck. I grabbed my 7 mag from the back. I loaded it, put the bolt in it. I sat there for a few minutes in his driveway. It was a horseshoe driveway. And I pulled out and I drove home. And I lived about 30 minutes away by interstate, you know, speed limit. It was about 30 miles from my house where I lived in Hattiesburg. But I probably didn't get over 40. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over for going too slow. And just bawling. I mean, I broke down. I couldn't believe what had actually just happened. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was too much. It was very overwhelming.
What were you thinking while that was happening and you were driving?
Well, I thought back on every other time I heard anything weird, man. I mean, not maybe particularly in that instant, but I do remember distinctly getting turned around in those woods during deer season. Not that year, but the year prior. I was hunting again, way down in the back, off in the bottom, but I was deep. And, you know, once it gets dark, the woods look all the same. It doesn't matter what you know, what you think you know. If you don't have a compass or a GPS, you can get turned around pretty easy.
Yeah.
And I probably just missed the trail coming out, you know, to go to my four-wheeler. But I was in that bottom, and I knew if I followed that bottom all the way around, that it would come out right behind the house. So I'm walking through, and I've got my flashlight, and I'm carrying my 7 mag, and you know it's Mississippi, so it's not that cold. I'm sweating my butt off walking through there. And at the time, the story I told after this was I walked up and a bunch of hogs. I walked right up in the middle of a whole bunch of hogs, and I'm in a bottom. And it's, you know, I'll walk and I take a few steps in, all of a sudden I hear all around me, you know, what I think is hogs anyway. But I distinctly remember hearing bipedal walking going away from me.
I ain't never heard a hog sound like that.
Well, Mark, that's the only thing it could have been to me at that time.
Right, because we don't have anything to equate it to at that point.
Right. And I mean, even thinking back, you know, if I'd have walked up and scared off a bunch of hogs, they would have got me, man. He would, especially a big boar.
And they invariably make the exact same noises. I've heard them my whole life down here. I have never heard a hog make a noise that I can't attribute and say that's a hog. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's always like very obvious. I mean, the difference is when it's 400 to 500 pounds, it sounds like it's giant. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the only difference. It's the same noise, though.
Well, outside of the fact that I'd never seen a hog in there.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But they didn't come after me. I was in the bottom. Hell, they had the high ground. You know, it was all around. It was probably maybe 3 or 4. But I could definitely hear, maybe not the others so much, but there was one to the right. I could distinctly hear walking away. It sounded like somebody walking off, you know. And I thought that was kind of bizarre at the time, but, you know.
Well, that is bizarre. And I can understand why you would be like, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now you're saying you're driving home and you're thinking about all that now.
Yeah, that crossed my mind. Another time that crossed my mind is, I mean, I was a bit of an outlaw. I'll admit it. You know, if I was going after the big buck, I'd be out there at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, in my tree climber in the moonlight.
Right.
You know,
big flashlight.
Yeah, well, no light, no flashlight. But the big bucks, you know, they don't come out in the daytime. You know, if he's in there, he's moving at night.
Right.
And you know, I could see through my wide angle scope good enough in the moonlight to put him down. And it was as simple as that. I was far enough back there. If I would have shot, nobody would have known anything. You know, they would have just heard a boom way off in the distance. I know because I've done it.
So what happened?
Well, I'm up the tree, and this is in like February. I mean, and it's pretty damn cold. I'm sitting up there freezing to death, and I hear way off in front of me, maybe, man, 200-300 yards. I hear what sounds like somebody with a hammer hitting a 2x4 or hitting a piece of plywood. I mean, just bow, 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 bow with rhythm. And then way behind me, man, it's about the same distance, maybe 300-400 yards. I hear it again. Bow, 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 bow. And that happened maybe 4 or 5 times. And I didn't know what the hell that could have possibly been. I mean, at the time, I'm thinking, okay, that's a big buck, and he's hitting his rack against some bamboo. You know, that's the only thing I could think it could have possibly been. You know, looking back now, obviously, I know what the hell. You know, But I never saw a track, and I didn't smell anything the day I had my sighting. I smelled nothing, but I had smelled things before that just didn't smell right. Somebody's sewer pipe busted, but there's no sewer back in there. It was brief and it was fleeting, but I had just all these things come rushing back to me, all this confirmation that, Mark, I could be sitting in my shooting house, one of the shooting houses, deer hunting, and hear something come walking beside me. 10 feet away, walking right beside my shooting house. I'm thinking, this thing's about to come out. I'm fixing to get the big one, and it never comes out.
Right.
Just that happened to me several times. Several times that happened. I'm watching my illegal corn pile, probably telling them this is 9 years ago, so
right.
They can take me to jail if they want to. I know I'm watching that, and then I can hear it right beside me. Crunch. Slow, like it's just creeping out like a buck would do, but never came. And I eventually stick my head out and look, and there's nothing there, just weird little things like that. And I had heard that slap and knock before, like as soon as I would come in, I would hear it. Somebody's knocking on something. Well, I thought it was somebody up at the house, probably, 'cause it was pretty close. Somebody's knocking on something up there, but it happened. It happened a few times, just as I came in, and then that night I was in the tree. It happened, hearing those slapping pops. But after I had that encounter, I haven't been back in the woods since that day. I sold my 4-wheeler. I sold it actually to Mr. Garway McGee, is the man's property I was on. I sold it to his nephew.
Did you tell him?
No.
You didn't tell anybody about it?
Absolutely not. I didn't want to relive that. No way.
The property owner, nothing?
No. I didn't tell anybody anything.
There's a good chance that they already knew, and that's why they leased the damn property. You know what I mean?
No.
You don't think?
I don't think so. Nobody ever went back there, Mark.
No.
But it was. I had to pretty much rework the whole place. It was so grown over and.
Okay, I got you. Well, so you're driving home and you're having an internal struggle, is what it is, and I know because I've had that, and so the whole thing's going over. It's one thing if you're unsure, but it's completely different when you had an encounter like what you just described, and then like with mine, there was no getting around it, man. You know what I mean?
Right.
As crazy as it was, it just happened, and I know what happened, and there's nobody gonna tell me it didn't happen. It's ridiculous that I had to go through not having validation in the first place, but so you're looking at this and you're starting to attribute things, and now you're starting to feel uncomfortable, obviously, based on your behavior afterwards, where you just said, I need to get rid of this. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yes, but I still questioned it. I had to have confirmation. I had to have an answer. I couldn't just let it go. I never researched Sasquatch before then. Not once. I didn't give a shit, if it was real or not. If it was real, it wasn't anywhere around where we were, that's reserved.
How long did it take you after the encounter before you started kind of looking into it the first time?
The very next day.
So you got home, and what time was it when you got home from that whole thing? You obviously were shook up. Did you talk with anybody about it? Did you tell Jennifer?
No, I had called my brother. I wasn't with Jennifer at the time.
Okay.
I called my brother, and because I was going to get him to go get my 4-wheeler. And I told him that I got sick and I had to get out of there, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to get back. But he wasn't able to do it, so I eventually just ended up selling the thing.
So you literally left your 4-wheeler?
I left it right beside the house, yes.
Was that your plan to begin with, or?
No, I left my 4-wheeler. I'll bring it with me.
But you just wanted to get in the truck and get the hell out of there.
That's right.
So that's incredible. You literally left your equipment.
Yeah.
Oh man, I feel for you, brother.
there's tree climbers still out there. There's tree climbing. There's 4 tree climbing stands still out there. I guarantee you they're still there. I'm sure they're rusted to hell and back, but there's what's left of them
I have a
still
little input for you. Okay. It took 2 hours for those turkeys to come in, right?
roughly.
And right around the same time that those turkeys came in, he was with them, correct?
Well, he was coming from a completely different direction. He was probably 200 feet away from the turkeys, but they're coming up the game trail, and the bottom it just kind of wrapped around where I was. If you're looking at this like a football field, okay, and I'm in my little northwest end zone, and I'm looking down the north sideline all the way down the game trail, and then he's coming from the far corner, the southeast corner. That's where he came from, was down there. And that bottom just wrapped all the way around. It just got shallower as it came up to the game trail. It was a little bit deeper as it came off, down the corner, down the edge. I didn't hear anything before that. I mean, nothing like walking or anything. I could hear the wildlife, obviously the birds chirping or whatever, but it wasn't. It was calm. Everything was calm and peaceful, and they're coming. I'm zoned in on these turkeys, and as soon as they perk up and are gone, they just explode through the woods the other way. They fly.
My point that I wanted to raise to you was that it almost sounds to me like he was there watching you, first of all, because now you've described some similar situations where it's possible that they were coming up and you just weren't aware that it was them. You attribute it to a buck, you attribute it to a squirrel, whatever it ends up in your mind.
Right.
But you had prepped the area, and so now you got the turkeys coming, and they came for a significant distance before he stood up. And I can tell you from observation in the field that they do not do that. They don't do that. He did that, in my opinion, as a researcher and what I've seen in their behavior. He did that because he wasn't going to give you one of them turkeys. And I think he spooked them off on purpose. And the reason I think that is because, first of all, you didn't see him go after one. What you saw was he came straight at you and then stopped and came up and was focused on you the whole time.
Yep, bitching at me.
Yeah, and I think that's telling that, the bottom line is they have these areas staked off.
Yep.
And that's something to remember, you know what I mean? And the other thing to remember is the boo game, and I just call it, I'll just put it that way. He could have had your ass anytime he wanted, and he might have took a load or 2 or 3 of buckshot and died doing it. But the bottom line is I think it's representative that he really just wanted you to leave. And that's kind of the behavior that you saw. I mean, that's taunting. He's sticking his tongue out, and he's showing you his teeth and shit. It's just crazy, man. That's just probably crazy. One of the craziest damn encounters I've ever heard, and I've heard quite a few.
Well, I mean, you understand why I had a lot of reservations about telling anyone what happened to me.
Of course. I mean, you didn't even tell your brother right then. I mean, how long did it take before you actually told somebody?
5 years.
So you held that in for 5 years. You didn't mention it.
Nope.
What'd you do with your guns?
I sold them.
You sold all your guns?
Not all of them. I still got a couple,
But your hunting rifles you got rid of.
Oh, yeah. That's all gone.
Wow.
Yep. It stole my peace, man. Completely robbed me of my peace. I could probably go back in the woods.
So now you're telling me, as a lifelong hunter, I'm an outdoorsman, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I know what I saw that day because it was, because he wasn't focused on me. It didn't impact me in the fear aspect the way it would have if he was focused on me like your encounter was. You know what I mean? The encounter I had was completely different, where he jumped the trail and he looked at me. He pulled the palm frond down and we stared at each other. But it was more of he was busied. And I, in hindsight now, after the research I've conducted, I've learned it, that they're so smart. I mean, this is like people, but they're giant and they're living in the woods and they've been there their whole life. So what would you be at this point if you were giant? I mean, the skill they have, the intelligence that they display. He was trailing a swamp buggy and paralleling their position, and they were running hogs. They were shooting off guns. They had hogs on the run through a huge hammock, and they were on the outside of it. Bam, 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 which they're not supposed to do in the first place. But he was on the outside of them, and he was a good distance away. But I noticed in his behavior that he was trying to stay out in front of them. And I think what he was trying to do was any hog that escaped, that made it out from in front of them, good 100 yards out, he was going to get it. He was going to get that hog. So he was smart enough to know, if I keep my distance, I can stay out in front of these goofballs, and I can get myself a big hog, because they're spooking it all. I mean, they're just running through here spooking everything.
Right.
And it's something that now I know from being observed by them on so many occasions, and actually having caught them on film doing it so many times, that this is what they do. And I just have a firm belief, based on what you told me, that he was there. Those turkeys came in, and he went, whoa, 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 whoa. No. And then he stepped up and spooked them off. That walking thing goes against, when the turkeys are present, that walking thing goes against every single instinct that any predator has. And that's the one difference between the Sasquatch species and every other every other game that's out there. They have the ability to govern their responses. They're emotionally intelligent. They're intelligent to the point where I honestly believe, based on my research, that this guy did that on purpose. He was interested in getting you out of there, and that you were not going to take one of those turkeys that he's probably been watching. Yeah. I mean, I base a lot of this on what you're telling me, and of course, this is all conjecture. But listening to your descriptions, the fact that he had mud all over himself, he's probably been laying there in that mud. He had it all over him. It sounds like he was laying face down. If he had it on his face, whether he put it on there or not on purpose, I don't know. Did you happen to notice any color differences in the mud and the skin?
No, I couldn't. He was definitely had hair, because I could see his skin underneath. The mud, I couldn't tell you if it was wet or dry. I mean,
but on his face, though, I'm saying, when you looked at his face, you said you could see his face. You said he had mud on his face also, right?
No mud on his face.
No mud at all on his face. Okay, and you said his skin was black.
Black, shiny. His face, I actually remember vividly the bridge of his nose being really pronounced, pointed nose, not really wide. Scottie Pippen, like I said. Big cheekbones, or cheek muscles over his cheekbones, and shiny black, like you polished them, like you polished some shoes.
Right.
No hair on his face. Not that I could really tell. I mean, not like there's no beard or anything like that. Such a really, the big, and I call it protagonist, and I know you know Latin. It just means comical, really, but it's protruding way out, and it doesn't have big lips. I like I told you before, you take Big Ugly, the picture you have of Big Ugly, and put a pointed nose on him, and that's pretty daggone close. Now, not exactly, because this thing I saw had a pointed head. I mean, his head was almost straight up to a point.
He had that Casper, the friendly ghost head.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a member. You've seen the films. You've seen a few of those.
Yes.
There's a few of them in our group, in one of the groups anyway, that they have that extremely pointed head. I mean, you're looking at it and you're going, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. You know what I mean? And,
yes.
I've seen a few of them with my own two eyes, and I can relate. You know what I mean? The lower jaw. I have studied a lot of the archaics. The Demancey skull from I want to say it's the Ukraine. It could be I don't know. It's somewhere over in Russia. It's in that Eurasia, kind of area.
Right.
I found a skull. It's the closest damn thing that I've ever seen to a Sasquatch lower jaw. and you know, the bone structure of the face. It's just got that, like you said, you know what I mean? It's the huge lower jaw.
Yes.
And you know, man, I look at, you know, all of this stuff, and you know, I look at it from a standpoint of, and I've always had this since I was 15. I had about 30 questions for the first people I ever interviewed. I was fishing one day. Guy come up to me that I fished with every day. I was in my spot and waiting for him, and it was summer and he was late, and I thought, where in the hell is Jeff, you know? And he showed up and he was freaked out, man, and he just was like, couldn't slow down talking, and we saw the monkey man, and oh my God, it's real, and blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, I didn't believe him. We went to the house, and his mother was with him, and they both saw it. It went after him. It came down, shooting down a pine tree. It was up in a pine tree, probably after a bird's nest, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was fascinated more with how it affected them than than the actual what they saw. You know what I mean?
Right.
And because that was the convincing factor for me. You know what I mean? I saw trauma. These people did not want to go back, and they were regularly out in that area. So
Yeah.
I hear that same thing in your interview here and your experience and all that stuff, and I never understood it until I actually experienced it. And then of course now, you know, I mean, it's been a few times, but you know, I look at what's going on, and it changed my life at 15 enough to where I became interested, and then pursued other people who had seen it from that day on as like a hobby. And then of course, you know, after my son saw what he saw in Mayaka,
Right.
it became an even more serious interest. And I was into cryptozoology and involved in the subject at a professional level before that. But the Bigfoot thing, I never thought in a million years that I would ever see what I saw, especially where I saw it. That's the main thing, you know what I mean? So, but I was, in moving forward, I started really hitting it hard after that. So I get it. You come home, and the next day you're looking at it. So tell us a little bit about how it affected your life the next day and move on from there. Because this is, I believe, the most important aspect of what happened outside of the encounter itself. I mean, this changes people's lives. It changed my life forever. It set me on a course that I can't undo now.
Yeah.
I have a legacy because of it. And it sounds like it maybe had the same type of an impact on you.
Well, I mean, it changed my life because I wasn't looking for it. I mean, if I had been looking for it, I would recognize what it was all along before it actually hit me what it was. And the real coup de grace for me was that huff. That huff blow, that powerful, when he did that, that's when I came unwound. Emotionally, even now, I had a nightmare not too long ago about it. You're talking about the next day, for weeks, I would just break down. I would just break down sobbing, because when the dust settles from something like that, and you think, you know, what this thing's possible motives could have been. I mean, everything you said about him protecting the turkeys. I went through I studied every possible contingency. I felt like he wanted to hurt me. I felt like he wanted me, but he knew what that gun was, because he didn't make a move. He was making that noise, that sound, but he didn't get really animated until I started moving my hand down towards that grip.
I noticed that in your, you know, recount. That stuck out to me. The other thing that stuck out to me was the prepping of the area, the turkeys. Your interest in the turkeys. And I say that because what we've noticed in the area is that they're a primary food, so they're like a staple.
Right.
And when the deer aren't around, they rely on that. And it's interesting because the exact area that we research is a secret turkey hunting spot. And I know that because I've had guys walk up out of the bush on me Melanie and I are there. I'm filming tracks. Dude walks up, well, actually, one guy pulled up in a canoe. He said, "What in the hell are you doing?" And I said, "I'm filming hominid tracks." And he said, "What?" And it took him a second. And I said, "What are you doing? Because you ain't supposed to be in there with no damn shotgun."
Right.
He said, "Well, I've been hunting this area for a long time." And I said, "I don't give a damn. It's none of my business, man." And he said, "Hominid tracks." And it took him a minute. And he said, "You talking about skunk ape?" And I looked at him kind of funny, and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'll put that sumbitch on my wall." And I said, "You might want to rethink that, pal, with that little shotgun you got there, because there's more than one in here." You know what I mean? But he took his canoe and he drug it right past the damn track I was shooting, and never even looked. And I can understand that. I understand that now because I spent so much time doing it. But when you when you get into looking into the subject and you saw what you saw, how did you feel when you saw the way the subject was being laid out by the public and for the public? Let's get your take on that, Kerry, because I know how I felt. I was pissed off.
I mean, I had an idea, before then I was probably on the fence about it, thought maybe it's possible, but it's not anywhere around here. So I've never really studied it. You see Patterson Gimlin on In Search Of, with, Leonard Nimoy and, stuff like that. I wasn't really that into things like that. It wasn't until that day that I really started, researching and just trying to get confirmation. I wanted to see what anyone else had encountered, the same way in the same areas. And I didn't find anything. I mean, nothing really good. You never saw the face of Sasquatch. I never saw another face of Sasquatch even remotely close to anything until I saw your stuff. And, going back and talking about, the whole gun thing, he had probably seen me kill deer in there for the last 7 years, and there's plenty of deer. The first year I was in there, I killed 10. I had to call them out. That's how many were in there. It was just the perfect habitat. I was one of the first days that I actually hunted there was I could see my truck, right by the road. I was in a big tall pine tree, and my tree climber and counted 17 does, yearlings, and spikes, one right after the other, going from the bedding area up the hills to the feeding areas. I mean, getting deer out of there was nothing. I mean, there was that many in there. But I had turkey hunted in the clearings in the front, I'd try to call them up, but I'd never killed anything. And it wasn't until I figured out where they actually were roosting while I was deer hunting that I knew where I wanted to go. And when turkey season came around, I'm not even sure. It was March 10th. I'm not even sure it was on a Saturday. I'm not even sure it was turkey season, but it didn't really matter to me, It was close enough.
Right.
I knew that calling would probably be effective at that point, being early spring. But I didn't get any validation. I didn't get any confirmation. I didn't hear any other story or encounter that was anything close to what happened to me. And it made me question a lot of things. It made me question my sanity for a while, But
I imagine so. I mean, I went through that myself.
Even though, you snap back and you realize, you saw what you saw. It wasn't a man. I thought it was a man, until I realized it wasn't, until the sheer size hit me. When he reached his arm out and grabbed that tree, you can't imagine how long these things, I mean, I know you can, you've seen them, but most people, they just can't imagine how long.
No, they don't get it, man. They don't get it. That's why it's the value of what you have as a perspective is you can't even calculate it for the general public. I mean, the value that your encounter has for people who don't know what's going on, because you got a damn good look at it.
Yeah.
The same with me. I got a good look at it too, and at him. And, I think that's where everything kind of goes awry in all of this, because we have this accepted hierarchy of like authoritarian kind of expert, whatever way you want to put it. The bottom line is if you don't know, then you rely on others. And that's just what it is with life. You know what I mean? So the general public, I mean, when I started looking into it seriously on the internet, that's when I started to realize I'm on my own here, man. I mean, there's people out there and they know what they saw, but all these other people are putting question marks on it and they're sharing it. Oh, well, this is this guy's encounter and it's over here and it's over there. And was this, it's always the if it could be real thing. And that's what pissed me off, because for me, there was no question. So, and I wrote a long article on this called "Who Decides What's Real?" Because the bottom line is like, I know what I saw, man, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I was motivated enough to do something about it. I mean, I'd spent a lot of time in the bush and I hadn't seen anything. Had I had a couple of things I couldn't explain? Absolutely. The whole thing you described where you hear the creeping, that happened to me on several occasions in some of my private fishing spots. And in hindsight, I know, looking back, that for some reason, after that occurrence, I avoided that area without consciously recognizing that I was avoiding that area. You understand what I'm saying? There was something in there that bothered me. And it turns out that it's very close to the areas where we research now, that we catch them on film and show you the things that we've seen. You know what I mean? Right. I've been going in that area my whole life. Me and my brother spent more time hiking and going to out of the way, inaccessible fishing areas. You can't get a boat in here, man. The lake's big enough, fishing a regular 18-foot bass boat, but you can't get to it. It's isolated. You know what I mean? But the tracks and all that stuff, I mean, granted, I was always focused on fishing. So, and it's like your story. You're focused on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you miss a lot because you're not focused on any of that. You're waiting on this.
That's right.
My focus was my next cast and where's the 10-pounder. I want the double-digit fish. You know what I mean? So I'm not looking behind me. I'm looking at the lake, the cover, what's available, variations in the shoreline. There's a million things that go through my head of how I can get my job done. And that's the way I always viewed it. This is my job, man. I attack it. I have a passion for it. So my focus, if it's not on that, I don't do as well as when I'm 100%, 110% focused on it, Right. And so I missed a lot. And it's obvious now because the bottom line is they do subtle. The Bigfoot species does subtle. Their entire existence is based on subtle. They don't survive unless they're professionals at subtlety. And I know that now. So, that's why we catch them on film, because I understand that. You know what I mean? And that's lost on a lot of people. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20. I mean, you'd agree, wouldn't you?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But, without the awareness, there's the ignorance, then there's the awareness. Now you're aware, you're looking at the subject online, and you never saw anything at all.
No, any account that I ever heard or anybody describing anything, it might have been close, but not like what I saw.
Well, the physical description, though, you obviously you can relate to that.
Yes, but another thing that I thought of is how many people had this encounter and are doing the same thing I'm doing, just not saying anything.
Oh yeah, the majority. I estimate that only 30% of people who have these encounters actually come forward. You know
right.
What I mean? I've heard numbers, and there's roughly 10,000 in the U.S. that we know of that have come forward and reported it and this and that. If my numbers are correct, and it's only 1/3, we could be looking at between 30 and 40,000 different individuals. There's 25,000 people roughly out there that haven't come forward, and I don't blame them. I mean, look at what's going on. I mean, you look at what's going on, and there's never been anything solid coming out of, like you got all these people that we think, I mean, when I got into the subject, I started looking at it, and I saw the weakness, because I identify that kind of shit right off the bat in my life. I look around, I say, well, that's weakness. I need to stay away from that, because that's just who I am. And where this subject was concerned, I saw a lot of that. And so I looked to the people that didn't have that. and a lot of that was in the programming, but they had no answers, and it was more questions. You know what I mean? So if the person had a degree and they were, they sounded intelligent, in my mind, that was the best thing. Let me follow that individual and get some answers. I've come to realize since then that was off as well. The bottom line is there are very few people who've had an opportunity to study this species in close proximity for any long, extended periods of time. And until you do, you don't have the answers. I'm sorry, but that's a fact.
Mark, I don't know of any other besides you that have been able to do this. Now, I listen to people, I listen to researchers on radio shows talk about how they've been researching for 40 years, and Sasquatch does this and they do this, and they've had a sighting once. How can you know all these things, even over a 40-year period, of being in the woods and only ever seeing this thing one time? I can't grasp a hold of that.
Well, no one can grasp it, Kerry, and that's why we're in the position we're in as eyewitnesses. You know what I mean? And the sad fact is that because that's the way the information has been disseminated in the past, that when you do actually conduct the research, and you have the opportunity to give the answers, they're ignored. I mean, that's just what's going on. I mean, the vast majority of the people out there haven't seen one and are involved in looking into the subject in ways that are not providing answers. And so they're reaching. And then that's when we get these explanations. Why don't we see the Sasquatch? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, they must be invisible. And at the end of the day, that's not the case.
Right.
And I'm just saying that because if that was the case, why are they hiding in the bushes? You know what I mean? So, and I look at all this stuff, and these were things that in my mind were viable explanations. Well, they can turn invisible, they can cloak. That was a viable explanation. But then, how is this happening? And you got to run to all these crazy explanations. Well, they can vibrate, and they can do this, and they change an electromagnetic, and you get all these things. And the bottom line is like what it is we're reaching for explanations for why it is we don't have good footage. And in my mind, I thought to myself, okay, well, if we take it back to its base element, thank God I saw what I saw, because when I saw what I saw, it set me on a path that was very simple. What I saw, the musculature of the individual I saw allowed this giant man, to do what he did. He cleared a 26 to 30 foot jump like it was nothing and landed tippy-toe like you would land behind your buddy trying to scare him. You know what I mean? And it was effortless, like he'd done it 1,000 times. And I saw the muscles bounce and react and flex, the flexion in the muscles that stopped him. And I looked at that and I said, well, now I understand why I find one track. That was the first thing that came to my mind from a research standpoint, was because I had walked up on some single tracks that were giant, and I thought, well, are they coming out of a portal and landing and then suddenly deciding to not be in this realm and then going back, to Sasquatch Candyland? That's the kind of shit. But that's the way the subject, we look online and we look at everything and you come up with all these explanations based on what people who don't know and haven't had the ideas or the information developed from long-term observation in close proximity, this is what you're going to get. It's like me trying to be an electrician when, I have a basic knowledge, but if I try to wire a house with today's technology, you're out of gas, man. Nothing's going to work right. And that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So when we look at all this stuff, I was in the same boat, man, coming out of this. And I say it again, if it wasn't for what I saw, I might have ended up with the whole "they must be invisible" thing, because I couldn't come to any rational conclusion for why I couldn't see these damn things until I actually saw one. And it was the fact that this guy could move in excess of 30 miles an hour in the air, you know what I mean, and land like it was like nothing. He looked like what I saw belonged in a science fiction movie.
Yes.
The physical ability. I got to see one at his peak performance, and really, I don't even know if it was his peak performance because it seemed so effortless.
Right.
If you ever seen Jurassic Park and you ever seen how those velociraptors bound and land effortlessly and they bound in another direction, that's the kind of ability I saw. And I'm thinking about this and I'm like, damn. And then it suddenly occurred to me that it would need to be that, or we would know all about this, because this is what makes them so difficult to study. They can be 1 second, man. You hear a twig snap. You look in the direction of the twig snap, and you're looking over that way. So you're walking that way. And I've experienced this hundreds of times. And I get there and there's nothing. Well, of course, they can jump 20 feet, and you might have just heard him. He might have relied on his right or his left leg to hop 20 feet. So I'm standing there and he's 20 feet from me, looking at me like, what a dummy. You know what I mean? They play with you, and so I get it, you know what I mean? But bringing it back into a more rational explanation and understanding the physical morphology of this species, having that to rely on has made me more comfortable, because what I see, Kerry, is I see a very primitive, symbiotic species. They're symbiotic with the planet. And I think that, based on what you're telling me, you describe some. I think you could, you'd be reaching, but the behavior that you're describing, the fact that it didn't do what you maybe thought it was going to do when you started to reach down that weapon, because you don't start moving around uncomfortably like that on your weapon unless you're getting ready to shoot because you think something's going to happen.
Right.
And in that respect, his reaction to that, you're talking about something that is so observant, something that has seen you or somebody else use that weapon.
Yeah.
You're talking about recollection, acknowledgement. There's a problem solving involved in that. This is human intelligence, not wildlife. You know what I mean? Like a deer is like, I look at it and I think this is just incredible, man. This encounter shook me up, man. You know what I mean? Your encounter is incredible. And looking at the subject, I don't know, man. I probably would have been even more angry having experienced what you experienced. If I'd had that experience and I saw the way this was being, the way the subject is laid out, and the existing shows that are on TV and the internet and all that stuff, it just, it frustrates me with what I know and what I've seen, and it did even back then,
The main reason that I guess it didn't really affect me like that is because it did. I was so emotionally affected from it. I'd never researched this thing before. Like I said, if I had been looking for it, I would have known exactly what it was long before I did. And it was that jolt of the power. That's what shook me up. That's what still shakes me up. For the last night, I was 34 years old. I've been in the woods since I was a little kid, 4 years, 5 years old, with my father, hunting, learning the woods. Had never even almost, nothing like this ever. And there wasn't a doubt in my mind that he wanted me to know he was there.
Let me ask you this. Okay. What was the moment that your mind said that you realized, I just saw a Bigfoot?
I guess walking out.
That's what you were figuring. You were like, that was a Bigfoot.
Yes.
Oh, man. So, but while you're in the moment, I don't know about you, but when I was in mine, the first one, man, there was about, I look back and in 200ths of a second, there was like 18 things popping through my head. Mm-hmm. I can remember them too, man. It was like, the first thing was, they're trying to kill him, because the guns were going off when I looked up and he was in the air. I looked up because the guns were going off, and here's this giant thing flying across the trail. I was like, they're killing him. I'll never forget. They're trying to kill him, I thought. And I'm like, we're in the middle of it. And there was all this other stuff going on, and I was thinking all kinds of shit. This ain't real. This is not real. I was thinking this is not happening. You know what I mean? And then he pulled that.
I
And
know
once he
exactly.
landed, I remember looking at how he landed in the tippy toe thing, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I couldn't believe it because it. And this is 2 seconds, man. 1, 2, and he was across that 20-foot trail. He came down and all that stuff, and then I was like, "What?" I even said it. What? Like I could not believe it. And then he turned his whole body because I think he heard me. What? Like I was like, "What?" Like literally, and I had my hand on my buddy's knapsack belt because it was all loose and shit was flapping around, so I was helping him with it. And I had just yanked on it when I looked up and went, "What?" Like this. And he landed, and then he turned his whole upper body and kind of shuffled, and it was kind of funny in hindsight because his whole entire lower body was visible. And he had a big old cabbage palm leaf in front of him, a palm frond in front of him, and he pulled it down and he stared right at me. And he he kind of like leaned his head out a little bit, and that's when the hair parted, and we eyed each other. And right then, I knew I wasn't hallucinating because there was way too much going on here. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, there he is. And then I looked over and I was like, turn the camera on. And then I looked back and the bushes were moving. He was gone. Never saw him again. Found a couple tracks right then, but I remember thinking as we left there. It like hit me finally, and I had already had experiences, man. I got screamed at, and I was pissed off, man, because I just tried to interview people at a preserve, and they were like, "Yeah, that's ridiculous. We don't keep reports on that kind of stuff, and this is ridiculous." And I'd like to come in here and investigate. And the guy was like, "Sure, you just need to pull permits." And I'm like, "Man, this is unofficial." He's like, "Well, you're gonna have to pull permits." I'm like, "You're telling me I can't come in this park and shoot footage?" Well, if you're on official research, you need to pull permits, and they're about $900, all this stuff. And I'm like, let me explain something to you, man. This is unofficial. You know what I mean? But whatever, man. At the end of the day, I had gotten screamed at less than an hour after that by something giant, man. It was just a giant dude. That's what it was. I found tracks, the snails, a crush, this whole thing. And so I knew they were real based on that experience, but seeing it, oh, man, you know what I mean? And so that was when we were in the car and I was leaving, the guy that was with me, his name was Matt. He says, "Are you sure?" It was real quiet in the truck. I'll never forget it. We'd just gotten off the dirt road coming out of the area. And we were on the pavement. And it was real quiet in the truck. And he's like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Man, I know what I saw." And I saw Bigfoot, you know. And that was when it hit me, you know what I mean, that I saw it finally. And I was like, damn, you know, I felt grateful, you know, because we didn't get attacked, you know what I mean? And I didn't know what I know now. This is 2013. And, I mean, I've done so much research. I've been involved in the subject for so long. But, like, I was one of those people who had all those opinions because they're asked about it, you know. I promoted myself and you know what I mean? I was like, listen, I have a belief on this subject and this is what I think. And people called me and they said, "Hey, you want to come on the show?" And I said, "Sure, man," you know. And they'd asked me my opinion. And really what I studied, because I wasn't intensely involved in the field, was the programming. Because I knew after what I experienced in Mayaka, after what I'd experienced in the bush a few times up to that point and then getting screamed at, that they were not telling the whole truth on television. Because this was a big dude. You know what I'm saying? This was a big guy that screamed at me. So that's, you know, most of the time, the information that I was asked to lay out for people on their shows or whatever was about the programming because they knew that's what I specialized in. But after that, man, I wanted nothing but field research. And you know what I mean? So, you know, I get it, man. I mean, everything you said tonight, this is a serious situation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're in a conundrum now, you know?
You were talking about, you know, realizing what it was. You know, for me, in the moment, I was shut off. You know, any movement I made was purely reactional. Right. I mean, you know, standing up. I mean, I don't even, like I said, I don't even remember breathing, you know, but even after he was gone and I was able to actually get out of there, you know, shaking still and walking through, I knew what I had seen, you know, as that's going through my mind. But even then, you know, no pun intended, I still wasn't out of the woods. You know, to me, I was still in danger.
Well, you had a very different encounter than a lot of people. Typically, we just see it and it moves off. You know,
And apparently,
mine was extraordinary, but yours was, to me, hearing it, putting myself in that position, that's straight trauma, man.
yeah, it still is. And apparently, either he or another one or several followed me out, because when I got to the bottom and it was just relatively open up to the top of the hill, you know, where I was about 200 yards from my four-wheeler, and it was a pretty good uphill grade to get to it. When I stopped to turn around and I heard that tree break, it was not a small tree either. It was sound like a rifle going off in the woods. And I mean, before I had left, I had tunnel vision, Mark. It's like you're looking and everything in the periphery is just like heat, you know, and my face is hot and my body is just, I'm on fire, you know, I'm hot, I'm burning. I'm shaking my legs. You know, I remember half maybe of the walkout.
Right.
And I could probably take you through every single road, every single step of that in my mind. But at that particular time, I don't really remember. I remember the stopping parts and the last part where I actually stopped to turn around. And when I heard that pow, that crackle, pow, you know this is not a rotten limb, or this is a tree.
No, it's snap, crackle, pop, man. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've heard it many times.
That's when I actually started running, because I was close enough to my four-wheeler to run.
Well, I can tell you, my encounter was one thing, and then, you know, now we have Melanie and I have 2 years of intense field research, and I can tell you, there have been times, there was 2 weeks ago, I didn't think we were going to make it out. You know, I even stopped on the trail and I said, I honestly feel like we're not going to make it out of here. And she was like, I'm feeling the same thing. And I'm like, turn the cameras off and let's go. I don't care what's happening. I don't want to stay here anymore. And actually, it was the day that we put the film out with all that knocking. There was things going on in the bushes around us. There were palm fronds and palm trees shaking and things. They were just like, yeah, we're here, and you know it, so we're not hiding it. And it was just,
right.
It was too much. It was too much because, no, I mean, I examine footage for a living. This is what I do. I do it 100 hours a week. And I know absolutely how many are in there. And I know absolutely what most of them look like. You know what I mean? I've seen a few of them up close and personal. And I look at what's going on, and it's like, you know, the trauma began with the research. And right off the bat, man, I remember vividly being hit with the branch the first time I went in that, we'll call it a bottom. But really what it is it's off a levee, and it's down in an area that's so thick that you just, you know what I mean? You're not going in there. And I had the same experience you just described. I actually was whacked, knocked on my ass. The camera went flying and got back up, and I stood there, and I was in a complete state of shock. Complete state of shock. To the degree that when I came up, she said, "What was that? Did you get hit with something? What was that?" And I said, No, everything's fine. Let's leave. I just wanted to leave, man. You know what I'm saying? I did not want to be there anymore. And it was, you know, when I got home and all the dust settled and my heart stopped, you know, I felt like I was going to die. Like, you know what I mean? Because I'm down in there. And it's like, man, you know, and I can relate, you know. And the trauma is real, man. I mean, you know, we look at all that stuff every time we come out of the field and we're like amazed. And, you know, I don't know, man. I think it's built into us that, I mean, at this point, that, you know, we just somehow, I don't know what to say about it, man. It's almost like there's a built-in sensor or something with me and her, because we go back every week several times, and you know, most of the time there's something going on, man. And you know, when you're that close, I mean, as many times you've seen the footage, man, you see all that stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it.
You look at it at home, and you're like, and she's going, man, you know, and every once in a while we look up, and that's when we have difficulty. when you look up after, good 3-4 month run, and every once in a while we'll put the site on and we'll run through the films,
Right.
and that's when
And
it really hits us. And then for a day or two, it's kind of like I get like I want to throw up. I get the nausea. You know what I mean? I get
oh
the
yeah,
nausea and all that stuff, and she does too. I mean, when it all first started, Melanie was a wreck. She had no idea that any of this was even possible, and then we found a track, and she agreed to get into it the way we wanted, that I described. If we're going to do this, we're
right.
going to do it right. We're going to do it hardcore. This is going to be absolutely what we're doing. And she didn't want to do it, and then we almost ended the relationship right then and there. And if it wasn't for finding that track, I said, just give me one chance. Just come out here with me, and let's just take a hike in the woods, man. There's nothing going on. You know what I mean? I had to get her out there.
Yeah.
And then she found a track, but I look at what's going on, and it's like, at times it does get difficult because you sit back and you realize what's going on, and you have to stop. It's like doing the job kind of outweighs the reality of what really is going on.
I mean, it has
for
to
us,
for you.
You know what I'm saying?
It has to for you, because we can sit here and say all day long, after the dust settles. The dust never really settles, Mark. Not for me.
No, it
Never
doesn't.
really.
It doesn't. It doesn't. That's one of the. And I gotta be honest with you, man. It's one of the reasons what we're talking about right now, the trauma of both your encounter and our situation for the last 2 years, is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for that drone. Because
Yeah.
I don't have to go in if I don't feel right. Whereas
Right.
before, I always took it upon myself as I'm responsible for this. You know what I mean? And that will make you not okay after a while. You know what I mean? Like, you get down in there and there's stuff moving around and you have difficulty. You know what I'm saying? And you know what's up. You know what I mean? I know what's up, man. They're right there, and they're so good at what they do and their ability to survive. It's just,
What blows my mind more than anything is how something that size maintains. How do they sustain? I mean, they have to eat a ton first to get that big. I mean, to get to be. I mean, cows are that big, but they eat all day.
That's right. That's right.
And you take what I saw, stand a cow and stand it up on end, and that's pretty much it. I mean, as far as size.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, a big part of the research is trying to provide answers for those primary questions. And I think science itself, the people that have ventured out of the closet, so to speak, and in these television shows have proposed those questions. That's a primary question. If this thing's real, how is it living? I always say the same thing, and I'm just going to say it this way. If the American Indians can survive to the tune of hundreds of thousands living off the land, and now there are hundreds of millions of modern humans, Europeans that came here, then the Sasquatch species is a given. You know what I'm saying? Granted, it's a totally different kind of survival, but I know what's real, man, and I know what I saw, and I know what we researched, so I know they're eating something. And I go in and I look at the area, and because I have a viable research area where we study in close proximity, and they are there, I see what's going on. I see the heart of palm. They're eating the heart of palm, and they're eating a lot of it. They're eating every edible species, and they're eating stuff that probably humans would never even look at, but they're also eating the meats as well, and the birds and the squirrels and the possums. And when you really look at what's going on, it does raise concerns with me, because a lot of the management practices, I don't see. When we started going into this area, there was a lot of wildlife. At this point, there's not. There's not a lot of wildlife. I've seen 1 or 2 squirrels in the last 8 months. There was dozens of them all in the trees, and we actually saw them shaking, the trees being shaken and the squirrels coming out. Heard the squirrels being choked and killed, you know what I mean? The turkeys,
Wow.
We've heard them you can hear the turkeys explode. And I don't mean the turkeys screaming. The turkeys are screaming, and then you hear a turkey explode. Like something grabbed it, and it's abruptly stopped and then slammed on the ground, or it's something. It sounds like a bird exploded. You know what I mean? you know it's them, man. Nothing sounds like a Sasquatch coming through the bushes. It's a Sasquatch. You know what I mean? It's like, and when they get on something
Yep.
and you hear this, it's like, damn. You know what I mean? And you're just like sitting there. It's that panic again. You know what I mean? But I look at everything you said tonight, man, and I appreciate you coming forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not an easy
I'll
thing
love that.
it's not an easy thing to experience, but it's even harder to come out with it. You know what I mean?
Well, you kind of relive it, and I had a few of those panic moments while I was telling you, the few times I have told the full details, the way I told you, it comes back. You catch waves and just that stop, just that, oh my God, just when I think about that unsettling noise first, I mean, it's indescribable, but the power behind when he hit me with that huff, that was where I came apart and stayed apart for a long time. I was 34. I'm 43 now. It's been 9 years, and it still affects me.
Have you ever heard me do the huff? Have you ever heard me do that in our films?
I haven't heard anything like that ever before. I mean, I've heard you do it, yeah.
It didn't sound like that?
There's much more power to it. I mean,
well, yeah, but I mean the general thing, that thing. That's what they do down here. They have that thing where it just, there's no getting around it. It sounds, it's like this. It's almost like I don't want to call it a grunt. I don't. It's not a grunt, man. It's some type of it's like a vocal pop. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know. Was that similar to what you heard, or was it more of a raw kind of thing?
No, there was no right raw in there at all. It was that was it. Only magnified.
You didn't hear anything else in those bushes around you?
No. And I was listening.
I'll bet you were. I would have been tripping, man. That's so crazy, man. That's one of the best encounters I've ever heard, Kerry. I'm telling you right now, man. Excellent, man. Excellent. I think you did great. Have you ever given that encounter on a show or anything like that?
Never.
Well, we're gonna keep it on the website here, man. You know what I mean?
I told Jennifer I didn't. My wife. I didn't go quite that much detail, and she couldn't believe it. I mean, not that she thought I was lying to her, but just more she thought I was mistaken.
Well, it seems like something from a layman's point of view, or perspective of someone that just kind of knows what they know and hasn't experienced it. That's so normal, Yeah. I got that so many times, man. I got that from a guy who actually, it's funny because I got this job, and I was filling some gaps financially when we first started, and I was doing this body work because I do a lot of different things at a professional level, and I was raised doing body work. My family's all bikers and all that kind of stuff, so body men, you know what I mean. And I had a spray gun in my hand when I was in diapers, you know what I mean. And yeah, man. So I'm like, yeah, I can do this, and the guy's like, all right, well, come on in. Well, it was the weirdest thing, because we started researching in the area I had my sighting, and it turned out that the head painter at the shop I was working at was fishing regularly at night in the area that I had my sighting. And I'm talking about a couple hundred yards away from where I saw him. And I was like, and he got, oh, you heard you're a bass fisherman or something? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, I fish out here in this area. And I looked at him, and I'd already seen one. That's when I saw the big one there. And I was like, yeah? And I was like, let me ask you a question, man. You ever seen anything weird or heard anything out of the ordinary there? And he stopped dead in his tracks and turned around, and he's like, why you ask? And I'm like, I'm just curious, man. I saw something out there that, I don't want to get into it now, but have you ever had anything out there happen? He goes, well, I fish at night. A couple months ago, my buddy and I were standing about 2:30 in the morning fishing the canal. I had my headlamp on. He was about 100 yards down the canal, had his headlamp on. And behind us, there's the little levee here. If you know where I'm talking about, and I was like, I know exactly where you're talking about. And he said that he said this, somebody walked up in the water on the other side of the hill, on the other side of the levee. And then,
Somebody.
yeah, and then he said, but then it made this, he made this sound, and then I think it was hogs, and then they took off. Well, apparently, it took off in the direction of the guy that was 100 yards down, and I guess it started doing something because he got down in the fetal position, this other dude, and they evacuated the area immediately. He said I saw the guy's headlight bobbing back and forth like he was hauling ass after he got up off the ground. And the dude, they got in the truck and they left, and he said, yeah, man, I was in a fetal position. That scared the shit out of me. I ain't never going back. And they said, oh, it must have been a big hog, And he said that to me. And so I get it, because even people who've experienced it, their presence and the behavior, they don't want to believe that. They don't want to hear it.
Right.
It just is too much. You know what I mean? It's just a living caveman. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, when I walked up in the middle of the quote unquote hogs, looking back, it wasn't. I know it wasn't. But then that was a story I told. Man, I almost crapped my pants, man. I walked right up in the middle of this bunch of hogs at night. I got my headlight, and I got my rifle. But, I can't see anything. And I can just hear them moving all around me, making that, Yeah,
That's the sound they made?
Yeah, pretty close to that. It was, yeah, pretty close to that. It was, out the nose, the nasally blow,
Oh, man.
I'm down in the bottom, and they're up to my right, to my left, maybe kind of behind me a little bit. And I can distinctly remember hearing the bipedal walking away, even then. But I didn't, I thought it was kind of weird, but what I really thought was strange is why they didn't come get me. You walk up in the middle of a bunch of hogs and scare them at night, a big boar hog, he's coming to get you.
Yeah.
You're in trouble.
He's going to protect the group, man.
Yeah. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I didn't happen because it wasn't hogs,
Yeah. Not to mention the sound and the walking, you know what I mean? I know, right. Man. I know. And back then, it's your perspective. You said you don't. Yeah. How can you attribute it to something that you're unaware exists in the first place? You know what I mean?
Right. Now, it's just like signs. I never saw tracks or anything, but I never looked for any of that stuff.
That's what I'm coming from as well. The 30 plus years I spent out there, I wouldn't look for no damn tracks like that, man. You know what I mean?
I'm looking for deer tracks and stuff, but I still never saw footprints or, my own, my boots. That was it.
Right.
Literally nobody else came through there. And in 7 years, I had been all over that place. I scouted the hell out of that place. Many times. Been through it, over it, around it. Been in there with a chainsaw, cutting things down. I made it it was my spot, man. I would camp out for 4 days straight. Like it was nothing, just me camping. That was my place.
Oh, yeah,
I was
man.
Perfectly at peace. That was my sanctuary.
So what's your take on all this now, man? What's your take on all this?
In what respect?
Just everything. You've come through all of this, and you're moving forward now, and obviously you're a tremendous support for CryptoReality.us. Melanie and I thank you guys immensely. You and Jennifer, tremendous support you guys give us, and I look at everything that's going on, and it's obvious that you really want to move forward with some kind of validation on this. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes, absolutely. And if I hadn't had the experience I had, I can't say that I'd be doing anything close to what I'm doing now. I can't. With what we do, we do what we do because we can, because we're able. But we don't. It's not a second thought for us. It took us a while to get to the point where we were going to back you guys 100%, that we were going to be in, and we wanted to see you guys succeed thoroughly with what you were doing and be behind you, be solid behind you. But it's all because of what happened to me. And, now Jennifer, she wrote that article, a new believer. And I mean, that's exactly what it is for her. And her excitement in it now kind of excites me. She's wanting to go out in the woods. And of course, I've got my reservations about it. But I mean, for me, and I could go into the woods now, heavily armed, obviously. But but to go in to try to hunt or anything, I wouldn't have any peace about it. I'd be a freaking wreck the whole time. It's just it wouldn't be worth it to me. But to go in with her and actually look for signs and actually, to actually do this, I'm in for that, and, even coming down to Florida and, doing the Manatee Springs thing, I might have a few reservations. You probably won't ever know it. I mean, just simply because I'm telling you now, but I mean, there's going to be a lot of people around, and I think that might be a little bit different situation. But for me to do what I used to do, to just live in the woods and hunt, and that just be my getaway, I don't think that'll ever happen again. I really don't.
Yeah, it's affected you that bad.
Yep. For a long time. 9 years.
Well, for each one of us, man, it's different. That's the bottom line, I'm just glad. What I feel good about in the situation, in my involvement in the situation, and in your situation especially, is that I've been able to help in ways to help you, kind of recognize what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know what I mean? I mean, I feel that just, it does wonders for me. We don't get a lot of that. You know what I mean? I mean, our membership is small and loyal, and we look at, what we do as something that's so important, and it's, with the help of you guys and all of our other members, man, I mean, hopefully we're going to be able to bring more people to the awareness of the reality of what's going on. I mean, this encounter and your interview here tonight is going to be great for the members. I mean, I don't know how many people you've told that are on the site, but hopefully they'll give it a good listen, because I mean, I look at your encounter as one of the most astounding encounters that I've ever heard, man, and certainly understand why you feel the way you feel. If I could say anything to kind of help you with what you're dealing with, it's, what happened to you is so rare. It's so rare that,
Yep.
I mean, it only happened to you once, and all the times you went out there. You know what I mean?
Another reason I come forward.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I mean, if it was, I mean, I know what I know, and I'll be honest with you, man. Do I choose to take my brother and go fishing in this spot? No, I don't. So, I don't. It's like you said, you never really get over it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't. There's, once you get it and it's in you, it's like you're already got.
Right.
You know what I mean? You've been had, dude. That's the end of it.
Yeah. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be, and actually telling it, especially, telling it, a couple times recently it's cathartic. It is. I haven't really had any nightmares about it. I mean, I can be driving down the road and think about, that one instant, and my heart will drop, I'll get that. But I mean, I think that's just an emotional state, at that particular time. And then that crosses my mind, but it's crossed my mind a lot lately. I've really thought about it a whole lot lately. And I've thought about every possible contingent, what this could have been, what he could have been doing, I couldn't have done anything differently. I mean, I was frozen solid, I was stopped. What I did was probably what I would do again and again. But I went, just going through over the years, especially, even not wanting to really tell it, not just to not relive it, but just not wanting to hear anyone else's reaction to it, because I didn't hear anything else like it. I wanted to. I really listened to all these radio shows, and you see Patterson Gimlin, what they got. Those guys were on horseback. I think that was the factor there. nobody else researches on horseback. Maybe they should. They catch these things more.
Right.
But it doesn't affect me nearly as bad as it used to.
Well, that's good. That's one good thing about it. You know what I mean? I mean, I know in processing stuff, it's different. My situation is a little different because it's a repetitive, ongoing trauma, pretty much. So it takes a lot. But and for us, I don't know if I ever get over a lot of the stuff that's going on, and some of the, most of the stuff that goes on. Truthfully, man, most of the stuff that goes on, Melanie and I just kind of look at each other. It never even makes it into the films. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you're just kind of like, and it's must be shock is the only way I can describe it. Is this happening? Like,
it is.
We're in a state of like shock, like the whole time.
It is. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and then we're like, man, turn the camera, you know what I mean, or something, and it's like too late, or, but some of the things that go on, I'll say it that way, and where is it leading and all that kind of stuff, and our hopes is to validate or document enough to where we can continue to get people like you and Jennifer, Kerry, to get behind us so that we can confront people in these authoritarian kind of positions, or the accepted hierarchy of people who validate. I mean, the bottom line is I can't validate a species without the support of people who actually validate species. I mean, you can say anything you want. The bottom line is like people talk about science being objective and unbiased, and that's the furthest thing from the truth as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I deal with this every single day, and I look at what's going on, and to me, what I see in having conducted the amount of field work that Melanie and I have, we're dealing with another intelligent, upright, walking human primate. These things are far superior to us in every possible way when we're in the bush. If it wasn't for the fact that we have weapons, I honestly think that there's a good chance that they would have got us and took us out as competition, and somewhere along the line. I don't see, I think that the majority of what's going on in your encounter and in a lot of the stuff that goes on is because of who we are and the way we do things. And I'm not saying that your encounter was your fault. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the human species has a lot to learn about sharing. And it just, I look at what's going on, and they really, from our field research, I think we would have been dead 100 times over if they wanted us dead.
Right.
And so I don't think that as a species, now that's not to say there's not a bad one here, a bad one there, or one that's been shot by a human that has resentments or whatever. I just know that our field work has shown us that they're more evolved emotionally than we are. Because out of fear, I would have straight up shot a couple times for what's been going on if I would have been carrying a weapon. Thankfully, they are what they are, and they went the other way after they did what they did. But, I look at the situation, and it's especially where Melanie's concerned. Imagine taking Jennifer out, and you're in the area where we're at, and there's 5 or 6 of them coming through the bushes straight at you. You know what I mean? It's one of those situations. And, so I look at what's going on, and I honestly don't think that he wanted to hurt you, even though he may have portrayed that. And it's been an incredible encounter, Kerry. And absolutely incredible. I've taken away a lot of information from this that I can apply in my research. The turkey thing is huge. It backs up and validates, once again, stuff that, we've been considering in the field here. I've come across dozens of turkeys that just look like they were exploded. There's no meat. Right. Mind you, there's no meat. But I don't know. How they catch them? I don't know. Well, I think they get them when they roost. I do, honestly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and the other thing is it. I don't know a turkey hunter that'll sit there and clean his bird in the field.
Mm-mm.
Know what I'm saying?
No, you got to take pictures, man.
You got to. There's the ego factor. I always tell Melanie that.
Exactly.
When we find a turkey, I always say, remember the ego factor. You know what I mean? I take pictures of my bass. I take pictures of my fish. You know what I mean? It's a memory of the experience. You know what I mean? And however much ego is involved, whatever. The bottom line is like we want those memories. and for them, it's survival. So
Yeah, well, it's a trophy for it was for me anyway. I mean, I wasn't he didn't know, I guess, but I wasn't going to shoot one of those young ones. I wasn't going to shoot a hen. I wasn't going to shoot one of the young jakes, But that's what was coming when he scared them off. And I'm sitting there sounding like a turkey the whole time. Whatever in the world they thought about that, I'm sure he knew.
oh, it probably pissed him off. It just based on what you told me, it sounded like it pissed him off, man.
Yeah, he was pissed. He was upset.
It was like, oh yeah, he's just gonna do this, and it's that easy for him.
He was bothered, to say the least, but he got upset whenever I reached for my grip. That was it right there.
Oh, he saw it. He knew what was up.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you got anything you want to tell the members before we close the show?
No, just that I appreciate every one of them. I love, going on, the group and talking to them, when I get an opportunity to. And I enjoy our back and forth, I can't do it as much, right now, but I'll get back into to doing it. Just I appreciate all of them, every single one,
Well, ladies and gentlemen, members of CryptoReality.us, Kerry Arnold and his incredible encounter. If you have an encounter and you'd like to share it with everyone else here on CryptoReality.us, email me at CryptoReality.us@gmail.com and we'll set it up. We'll set up a time for you and we can do the same thing. You can share your experience and your encounters with the other members here. We think it's a great idea and an excellent opportunity to share your experience in a safe place. As you know, it's members only. So for Melanie and I and everything that we do to validate the Bigfoot species, we appreciate you coming on the show, Kerry.
Well, thank you for having me, Mark. Absolutely.
Yeah, man, and you know what? If anything else happens, please let me know. You guys are getting ready to go back out in the field, so you never know, man.
Yeah, you'll be the first.